Hello ladies and gentlemen, in this new series that I'm going to be calling Blue Boards, I'm going to talk to you about my first impressions with Terraforming Mars, which is pretty much exactly what it says on the tin. With that said, this is my first board game video, so I'm probably going to make a mistake or two, whether it be in the actual rules of the game I'm talking about or the terminology of the board game scene in general. So if I'm wrong on anything, please feel free to let me know in the comments. It's the only way I'll learn. This is also being played at 300% speed because YouTube hates longer videos, and while I did agree to mute all the sound because I thought it would come out terrible, as it turns out it actually came out okay, so next time I'll include sound if I get permission from my friends, of course. With that said, Terraforming Mars! It's a game about mega corporations bombing Mars with forests and cities, and sometimes a moon. The idea is to get as many victory points as possible by following the three main objectives: raising the temperature, raising the oxygen, and placing all the oceans on the field. When all three are done, all the points are added up and you get a winner. The game proceeds in generations. Everyone gets cards to pick from, which they spend money to keep, encouraging you to not keep too much in order to be able to afford what you're keeping in the first place. Cards can do a lot of things in both one-off, continuous, and active effects, and I think this is where the first positive lies. There are a lot of different ways to play and focus a strategy thanks to the variety. I focused on getting a lot of buildings for their immediate effects on my resources so I'd have more to spend. Another player went for an entirely science-focused build for that unique ability, another one focused on space for the rare and useful titanium resource, and another went for building a lot of forests and a lot of puppies for bonus victory points. There's a lot of strategy you can take, and with Preludes, part of an expansion which helps early game resources, and picking a corporation for unique ability and starting position that changes your early playstyle, should absolutely help the replayability. Everybody takes turns until everyone agrees to leave it alone for a full set of turns, at which point a new generation starts, where new resources are generated, everyone gets new cards for new plans, and that's where the real fun lies, getting those resources to buff up your resources, using those buffed resources to get even more, feeding back into itself in an endless loop. Board games call this building the engine, and after playing Terraforming Mars is easily the best part of the game. Having a new bunch of resources to play with, buying a bunch of new cards, increasing the amount that you generate each generation, and then just leaving the generation having doubled your incoming resources is one of the most satisfying feelings I've had so far in this hobby. It's only slightly gimped by the fact that once you're locked into the engine that you've picked, a sort of early game wonder of discovery is gone, and you generally tend to focus on very specific cards, making your late and mid-game choices relatively obvious. What's worthy of praise though is how all the unique resources have benefits. Money, of course, can be used for cards, but forests, oceans, and temperatures for that quick victory point boost are always available. Trading in steel and titanium for discounts on new buildings, biomass and heat in order to make new forests and raise the temperature for even more points, and energy for the more intense buildings that also gets turned into heat every generation. So you have multiple ways of going about things with the individual resources that you have. This philosophy also carries over to the victory points. Your three main objectives, you got your temperature, your oceans, and your oxygen, all give points when improved, but that's not the only way to get points. You've got individual buildings as part of cards that get victory points. Placement of your forests and other buildings like cities on the surface of Mars also gives you victory points. And the first player to reach certain milestones, overall points, cities, forests, buildings, and cards in hand award points too. You can even bet resources on extra rewards at the end of the game to give you an edge if you can see that you'll have it, but that doesn't guarantee that you'll win it. It helps that the awards and the milestones are also limited to the first three, so I was playing with 4 people here, including myself. Everyone was racing for those milestones in order to get as far ahead as humanly possible. He might have developed a lot of science, he might have put down a lot of forests, but all my fancy buildings were definitely helping me in the score, and as a result, the game wasn't really over until it was over. With that said though, Terraforming Mars doesn't really have that much in the way of a player versus player component, which I really feel there's room for, and I know that the game is competitive just at its heart, that's what the point of it, but hear me out. The main way that you can actively affect your opponents is drafting. The 4 cards you get at the beginning of each generation are passed around, and then you get passed other cards, but they've already taken a card from their pile. So the cards you get are determined by what the other players are willing to give you. And in certain situations, you are more than capable of taking a card out which will benefit another player even if you decide not to keep it, if you just toss it out immediately, that's fine. You've caused them a little bit of damage by not letting them have that card. But outside of that, there's no other way to interrupt an engine. Some cards do have abilities that can hurt another player's resources, but those are quite rare. And you do have the ability to screw another player's plan by doing something before them, whether it be an award, a milestone, or possibly putting a city down right where you think they were going to put it. But these are much more indirect and more based on the luck of the draw, in the sense that, oh, he's left that wide open, I can just jump right in there. I don't know how I would add or solve this personally, as it seems like adding combat or more intense attacks might wreck the balance the game is going for. But sometimes it just feels like you're playing more with yourself than you are with the other people at the board, especially in the first few turns where you're not sure what everyone else is doing yet, so you have no idea what to keep from them in the first draft outside of potentially just the most expensive card. More interaction between players would be the first thing I would design during an expansion, and I would like to say that I am only playing on the base game with the Prelude expansion, so if there's an expansion that has done this already, I don't know about it. Maybe I'd add something like global events that hit everybody and can potentially disrupt engines, requiring you to go in on a second resource in order to make it just a little bit fresher, give you a little bit more conflict so that you have to worry a little bit more about the way your engine works. But I'm not a game designer, at least not yet. I might not exactly have the best idea of what's going on here. What I do know what's going on is the game components, and it's an interesting mixed bag. There's a fair bit going on here. Like, for example, I really liked a couple of things that don't actually come in the base game. The guy who owns this copy of the game had these really nice cardboard holders for the cubes and this tiny little adorable rocket ship that determines who the first player is going to be. Turns out that didn't come in the base game. That's a thing that he added on as a third-party thing, and those are really nice. I would wholeheartedly recommend you pick up something like that, because the base way that you keep your cubes in check to check how many that you've got and what your production rates are just a flat cube. Bump the table too hard even once, and that's pretty much the end of the game. So that's not particularly great. I will give them praise for the cubes that represent the resources though, the bronze, silver, and gold ones. They are a little bit light, but seeing that slow pile of money or resources just slowly build up, like that scene in Harry Potter where he opens the vault and it's just a stack of gold, silver, and bronze, is immensely satisfying on a base level to me personally. And they're nice and shiny to just give it just that little bit more extra stuff on top. Good looking board too, and I do appreciate how it gets built up slowly over the course of the game with all the things moving around, the milestones getting their cubes on top, and the hexes and the cubes showing how we really built out Mars, although it's not as inherently satisfying as something like Carcassonne, where it all fits together so naturally, but it's still nice. It's something that I'm willing to give a thumbs up on. And the card art. I was a little bit surprised to learn that this is all public domain art, because after having looked at all of it, it looks alright. I don't have a problem with the way that it looks. Some of it looks a tiny bit funny, like how the dog can be really realistic, and then there's clearly some 3D CG going on for some of the planets and what have you. But honestly, I don't have a problem with it. It's still enough to communicate a theme without going too far into left field. And my final piece of just, I guess I'll call it praise, is that the game was 2 hours and 10 minutes long, and it's been shortened here to about 45 minutes, which I think is about right. You have to remember that I was learning the game, I was taking a bit more time with my moves than people normally would, and I imagine that once I'd sped up a fair bit, the games would be a little bit shorter, and as a result, it would be about the right length. I don't think it was too short, I don't think it was too long, I think it was just about right. And with that said, I think I'm more than happy to recommend Terraforming Mars, at least based on my first game. It is let down a little by feeling like a solo game from time to time, and the included components could do to be improved a fair bit, but building the engine is really satisfying. There's enough variance in the strategy to add some replayability, and there's 200 unique cards that can come out, which means that you won't be seeing all of them for at least your first couple of games. And so, yeah, really enjoyed it. Would be happy to play a few more games of it, and would be happy to go tell you to pick it up if you like what you see in this video. With that being said, this has been Blue Maxima. I'll let you watch the rest of the footage going on here, although with some nice background music. Thank you, Kevin MacLeod. I'll see you all next time.